Hello and welcome to Business Reporter's Best of British Business campaign. I'm Alistair Greener. Can the property and building industry deliver strong returns and still do right by people and the planet? It shapes how we live, work and invest. It also sits at the centre of climate risk, social pressure and regulatory change. Capital discipline and asset value pull in opposite directions. Long-term resilience, health and sustainability pull another. Whether those forces can be aligned or are destined to clash has become one of the sector's defining questions. Joining me to explore that question is Ian Shapiro, Chief Executive of BRE. Good morning.
Good morning.
When you look at the global built environment today, what's going wrong? What's not working as it should do?
Alistair, at the moment, we're looking too much at the short term, the quarterly earnings, the immediate return on investment, and we're not looking enough at the long term, the 10-year strategy, the multi-generational asset. I think we need to bring these two pieces together.
And what does that actually look like when you do bring them together?
The world's changing fast. If we look ahead 25 years from now and think about 100 buildings that will exist, 25 of those buildings exist today. That's your home, that's a hospital, it's a school, it's the office you work in, it's the data center. 25 of those 100 buildings exist today. 75 of those buildings, they don't exist. They're going to exist in 2050. That's less than a generation away. So things are changing fast, and therefore we need to really think about return on investment, managing asset portfolios, and what that future is going to hold. So the investment opportunity for the 75, how do you think about where your energy resources come from? So how do we use renewables? What kind of building materials do we need to think that they're locally sourced, they're sustainable, they're resilient? How do you do passive techniques which allow for cooling? We know we've got rising temperatures, we've got increasing flood and fire risk. So how do you design in a way that recognises that is the future of tomorrow for all of us? So there's a whole set of design challenges. Obviously, data digital provides an opportunity for that. You can integrate your portfolio and design it in from the beginning. What's the nature-based solutions here? You don't just want buildings, you want to think about the spaces between buildings. What's the green space? How does it feel from an air and a quality of life point of view?
And what about the 25?
So what does an asset manager do with the existing stock? They need to think about how is this going to be a resilient asset that is not stranded in generations to come. So what does that mean? You've got to do refurbishment, you've got to retrofit. So that depends again in the locations that you're in, but how do you deal with new kind of techniques like keeping away from cold and damp, for example, in England, we've got a significant cold and damp challenge. We've got over 2 million homes that are at risk of cold and damp, and it costs the NHS £1.4 billion a year. So that's lost doctor's appointment, no investment in hospitals, can't pay staff and have the facilities that we need. But we could respond to damp and mold, we could put insulation into lofts, we could close up airways, and actually that would make a better quality of life for the family living in that home, but also for the society. You would have more money for the National Health Service. So an example that you would use your asset portfolio very differently with what exists now. When 75 of 100 buildings don't yet exist, that will exist soon, unless we do this in the right way, and unless the 25 that exist start managing their resources better, water, energy, and so forth, we're all in serious trouble. Any chance of staying within a 2-degree temperature rise will be gone. You know, buildings already account for 1 in every 3 bit of the carbon emissions and energy use. So if we don't get it right here in the built environment, we don't get it right with buildings, we're all in trouble.
We know that developers are under immense pressure to balance all the elements that you talked about earlier on. Can you give us some examples of where BRE has delivered clear commercial viability for those projects?
Yeah, so let me give you an example of a US asset owner. They've got 30 properties within their asset portfolio. It's worth a couple of £1 billion in their portfolio. They debated, should they put all of their assets through BREEAM, our assessment tool? Should it help them manage their assets? And they debated it and they said, well, it's an additional cost that we take. Well, they've done it and they've put their assets through, and what they've found is that they've now got a much stronger grip of their energy use and what's happening. They've lowered their water usage by 20%. They've lowered their energy usage by 20%. So they've more than recovered the costs of using the certification that they've got, by many-fold. But more importantly, they've got a much more resilient asset that's going to perform better for years and years and years.
You've talked a lot about the future and the long-term future. So how do you think BRE should be judged in, say, 20 years' time?
BRE has been around for 100 years. It was established to help soldiers returning from the First World War to provide the right kind of accommodation that met their needs. And that kind of social purpose has run through BRE's existence for 100 years and will do for the next 100. And I feel my contribution is very much aligned with that. I've always been focused on the built environment and how we can make a contribution at mass scale everywhere. We want to be a part of enabling massive scale change so that every building that you walk in, every building that you look through the window of, where you meet, where you eat, where you sleep, every building where you work, pray and play, that you have confidence in that building, that it's safe, it's fitted to the local environment, and it will be there for generations to come.
For you, what are the key elements that you would like the audience watching this interview today? What would you like them to remember?
I'd like them to remember that it's not incompatible to think about quarterly earnings and 10-year strategy. They go together. We've got to think about resilience, we've got to think about profitability, and we've got to think about everyone in every building, everywhere.
That was Ian Shapiro from BRE.